Hi everyone, my name is Benjamin Quinlan. I am the CEO and managing partner of Quinlan and Associates and the chairman of the FinTech Association of Hong Kong. Outside of these two core jobs, I hold a number of other roles. I'm an adjunct professor at the AIT School of Management, where I teach FinTech and big data analytics. I also serve on the advisory and steering committees for the Hong Kong Trade Development Council and Hong Kong Science and Technology Park. And I have an additional hat as a conference ambassador for the Hong Kong Tourism Board. And beyond that, lots of other jobs I hold with various startups and companies within the fintech ecosystem in particular, where I have a number of senior advisory positions. Now, the purpose of me talking today is my introduction is not about gloating about my roles. It's to really tell you a little bit more about my journey of how I got here. And in particular, what some of the key takeaways can be for pretty much every CEO or every business owner out there. Because if there's someone that really gets the journey and understands the pathway to where to get to where I am today, it's very much something I can relate to and know. And part of, I guess, the topic today is really what we call in my entrepreneur journey and 10 things that every CEO needs to know. So a little bit of background, I think, would be helpful to set the scene. So I started my career as an M&A tax advisor at PwC in Australia. That was my first ever job. And admittedly, it's not the job that I really wanted. It was the only company that would actually interview me at the time. If you look back through my track record of job applications while I was at university, let's just say I was a little bit lazy and a little bit more on the sociable side of things when I went to uni. And as a result of that, I think the immediate screening criteria around what is the candidate's GPA, what are the extracurricular activities, mine was going to the bar. So as a result of that, I realized that I was missing out on a lot of these job opportunities. To put it in context, I applied to every single management consulting firm out there, every single law firm, because I was actually studying a double degree with law, and all of the investment banks, and I got rejected by everyone. I remember that rejection hit me quite hard because I knew academically I was bright enough to get the results that I needed, but I wasn't applying myself. So I actually put my head down, focused really hard, picked my grades up, went back to uni to do my honors degree. And then I finally opened up a window with the investment banks and I got my crack at the interviews again. 5 interviews, 3 went to final round, got rejected by everyone again. And as a result of that, I was really frustrated. But it was at that point in time, I wouldn't take no for an answer. Called up the head of human resources at UBS in Australia. And I said, look, this is where I really want to work. I really am not going to take no for an answer. There must be another role within the bank for me. And she said to me, Benjamin, there is actually a role right now where the CEO is looking for a strategy analyst. And I put my hand up and I said, sign me up. So I had to go through the interviews for that. And luckily, I got through that process and was selected for my first ever full-time graduate role with UBS in Australia back in February of 2008. That was the start of my journey. Now, as I started to go through the banking world, I remember I was with UBS in Sydney for a while. I moved back to Hong Kong after 2 years. My background, I'm actually originally from Hong Kong. I'm half Chinese, half Australian. But this was very much a place that I really wanted to be. Australia was nice. I didn't quite like paying 47% tax. Wasn't a fan of the shops closing at 6 p.m. There wasn't the same buzz, and I really missed home. And I think from working in financial services, I love the idea of being in Hong Kong because as the international financial center, I got to look at all the different markets that UBS was operating in at the time. But I remember I got an itch, and during my time working in strategy for the bank, we had a lot of these consulting firms coming in and speaking to us. And I remember thinking, wow, these are really, really intelligent people. They know so much about this industry that I'm not familiar with at the moment, or market insights and competitive landscape, all these other things that I found fascinating. So I actually applied to work at one of the large global consulting firms, and I did get a role there. And that was, I have to admit, an amazing experience. But it was quite exhausting. It was tiring, very long hours, huge amounts of travel, which, while I look at travel as a problem then, I wish I could travel now, just like many of us. But I had to actually take some time off, and I took a break from that career. I took a 7-month sabbatical, and I just basically unwound. I needed the time to decompress. During that time, I started to try my hand at stand-up comedy. It was actually the first time that I wanted to get up on stage and do something almost cathartic for myself. And it was a journey that I really, really loved. And that ended up actually becoming a parallel career, which I have to this very day. But after 7 months out of the market, I remember the investment banks calling me back in and saying, we want you to come in and do these various jobs. There were heads of strategy roles available at various institutions, and I took one. And going through that journey, I still remember a lot of the feeling or negativity around why I didn't want to be in these organizations in the first place. But there were great things associated with it, right? But there was one point in time where I was actually offered a global role in London, and they said, we'd like to transfer you to London to basically run the strategy department globally for the bank. And that was my kind of light bulb moment where I said, I'm not going to do it. I'm going to turn this role down, and I'm actually going to set up my own strategy consulting firm. Now, if I look at this first prong in my decision, it was not an easy decision to make. I have a Chinese mother. I had to tell my Chinese mother I would turn down a global role and a big pay packet to go and start up my own business. And that is not the easiest cultural thing to convince within a family that has quite different definitions of what success can mean. But I fundamentally went through this whole career experiencing, realizing that something was a little bit wrong. When I was at the bank as the head of strategy, I did not feel like I was in charge of strategy. I really felt like I was a rubber stamper to senior management agendas. And no matter how many things I knew were wrong or could be changed, the internal politics of many of these organizations made even doing the most simple things really, really painful. And I thought this was the job I was supposedly hired to do. Even when I look back on the big consulting experience, I often thought, what is the value add that we are delivering? We are more often than not validating actually what our clients want to hear. This is where this whole concept of hypothesis-led, our hypothesis, our view of where things are going to go is, and the client would be like, well, that hypothesis is aligned with me, so therefore it must be correct, or go down that path. And I generally found that this was, I would call it sometimes very intellectually bankrupt. It wasn't a true assessment of what a consultant should do, of really picking apart what company problems were and coming up with a view of how to advise them on changing it. And as a result of that, I realized, these were jobs that provided me different parts of intellectual stimulation, things that I really loved. But the politics and the objectivity of the advice was so poor that I said, well, why don't I do it myself? Because I've sat on both sides of the table. And there was always this one thing as well that made me realize, well, why should I be able to go out and do this? Because I was going around the market and asking people, what did you think of your time with these big consulting firms? And they would almost never answer in the positive. And they would always come back with the view of, thanks for telling me what I already know in a 500 slide PowerPoint deck. Or thanks for showing me a bubble chart of China in the top right with 1.4 billion people on this 2x2 matrix of your 500 slide PowerPoint deck. And especially when you attach the prices to it, and I realized the teams that were being deployed to do this work were very young people with no experience in the industries that they were doing. It kind of made me realize, well, something's broken, but no one's challenged it. I think that there was one point as well where I remember one of the big global consulting firms had this 5 key strategies to supercharge your digitalization efforts. And there was an infographic on LinkedIn. And the second one said, invest more than your competitors but not too much more. And I was thinking, wow, that is revolutionary advice. Now, the point of me saying all this is not to critique every other firm. It's to basically say, what was the motivation for me to want to leave? Why did I go out and set up my own business? And despite this minor rant, the bottom line is every CEO, every business owner, and beyond every single title, there are many, many moving parts of a journey that people kind of get. They get themselves, but they don't talk externally about it, that are all far less glamorous. And as a result of that, I've been running my business now. I set up Quinlan and Associates in 2016 in April. So it's been 5 years that the business has been running. And that reflection of my 5 years has allowed me to come up with a bit of a view of, the 10 things that I've learned as a CEO that I honestly believe every business owner should know. So what is number one? Number one, in my view, is be grateful. I think there's only two people that start their own business. And really, in my experience, only two. There's people who are just natural born entrepreneurs, people that have it in their blood to go out and do the things they want to do. And the other side of it is the people that cannot stand to sing from the corporate hymn sheet for one more day, because I say it's written by tone-deaf composers. And for me, I felt like it was a bit of both. I've always felt much more at home in leadership positions and taking responsibility in being able to fall on the sword and not blame people. I always loved that. And I love the ownership associated with it. And growing up throughout my career, there were many times where I would think of ideas to change the world and I want to do this and I want things to work better or smarter. But many of those times, my creative spark or the energy I had was often dampened by the people around me. It could have been my friends in high school, my uni colleagues, my old bosses, and even some of my close friends. But despite all of that cynicism that I often carried throughout my corporate career, every single experience, be it good, be it bad, has taught me so much. It could be the positive and the negative. I think even the negative experiences teaches you more than you could ever imagine. Building new skills, new relationships, dealing with adversity. I told you the example about rejection. I'm not understating it. I got rejected from everything. And it's very easy at that time to feel defeated and to give up. The same kind of things are going to happen in business. And I don't believe you could have the right kind of frame of mind or character to run a business or be an entrepreneur unless you face that adversity and really understand what that means. And for me, I often think, I almost thank the people that challenged me and said my ideas or my business would never work, because I personally love a challenge, and the harder it is, the better. So really, lesson number one for me is be thankful for what you have been through, including all of the bad times, because you will have never developed thick skin if your career path has been nothing but a walk in the park. That's my first lesson. Now, the second one is when you step into a business, it's around how you want to do everything yourself. It's quite natural sometimes. A lot of this is due to two reasons, right? Firstly is you want to minimize overheads, right? You no longer have a salary. You're scared about bringing on all these resources because instead of getting a paycheck every month, you have expenses going out every other month. The other parts of it are the founders that fear ceding control because they like to be in charge of everything going on. But the reality is you cannot do everything on your own. Focus on what you are good at and work with people who complement your skill sets. It doesn't mean you shouldn't focus or continue to try and build the things that have area for improvement or room for improvement, but focus on what you are good at. Like the one thing that I realized is I'm terrible at multitasking. I'm actually good at doing a lot of things, but only one at a time. So I can't juggle a billion balls at the same time. So I had to bring on people to manage and own certain parts of the business that were critical to the lifeblood of the firm growing. And the amount of bandwidth this has given me to focus my energy on where I can add most value is absolutely insurmountable. I mean, it's absolutely indescribable. And then one of the main reasons as well, is I attached my own name to the company, Quinlan and Associates, and the acronym is actually Q&A. But I wanted to hold myself accountable for the vision, the culture, and the quality of the work that we do. And while I might be what you call the face of the company or the external interaction or the brand from the first outset, that is changing. More people are coming in to build that brand with me, and it's not going to be about me very soon. I'm just there as a spokesperson. But I have an outstanding team around me and a work culture where everyone is encouraged to speak up and call out what I call bullshit when they see it. And that's the culture that I want to encourage, because there's absolutely no point in creating all of that political dimension that we used to have in the big corporates and then implanting that into my own firm, because I know it doesn't create the best career experiences for people. So as a result of running my own business, just like every entrepreneur, I've been forced to let go of a lot of things. But I've been able to do this in an environment built on full trust and transparency. And these things are really, really important. Trusting your team and being transparent with your team, not hiding things. Of course, there are certain conversations where you need to have at different levels, but keep the culture open and honest. There's nothing that people don't know within my team, because at the end of the day, we are all in this together. So that brings to lesson number 2, which is really don't try and do everything yourself. And in order to run a successful business, finding and entrusting the right team is everything. Thirdly, you need to take a position. That's my third bit of advice. And I start this with, no matter what you do, what you look like, how nice you are, what you say, what you don't say, it doesn't matter. Not everyone is going to like you. And the sooner you realize that, the more at peace you will be. It's just a universal fact. One of the most important things for me in a consulting business is actually to take a position, not sit on the fence, right? Oh, I sit on the fence because I don't want to rub anyone up the wrong way. That's not the point. I never want to write something saying invest more than your competitors, but not too much more, and then destroy a rainforest printing this useless, verbiage. It's not relevant to me. Taking a position, of course, it comes with a lot of its own challenges, right? First and foremost, a lot of people feel, well, I could be wrong, right? But the reality is wrong is actually quite a subjective term. So it depends on what you're talking about. But in my view, being wrong about something where you have a very well-reasoned argument and you support it with facts and hard data, that will always be better than sitting on the fence and not taking a position. And in my profession, just like in any business you run, people are paying for your advice, your insight, your product, whatever it is. And you're never going to earn that much respect by saying, I'm cautiously optimistic, or what do you think? But always back up your views with real life examples and facts, and not just random conjecture, because I say that much more belongs on your Facebook. And the reality is, you go through that process, you're going to have a lot of dissenters, and you're going to have some people that actually just hate you. Even online, there'll be people that will troll you, people that just generally speak poorly of you. And to be honest, that's normal. Because the only universal truth I know about humanity is we have never, ever unanimously agreed on anything. I use this example of, did you know there are several 100,000 followers of the Flat Earth Society on Facebook, i.e. people who believe the Earth is flat. So if you happen to be part of the, 100-something thousand, I apologize for offending you, but I'll exchange notes and satellite images on the planet when I when I have some time. But that is the honest view. You don't have that universal agreement on anything in business. I remember actually we caused a massive stir when my firm released our infamous Bitcoin report back in 2018. And we called the price of Bitcoin at just shy of 2,000, and the market cap to plummet from, I think it was 800 billion at the time, to 200 something billion. And compared to all the other forecasters in the market, we were actually voted by Bloomberg as the most accurate in the world. But given the huge media frenzy around cryptos, all of this actually ended up in what you would call the mainstream media and social media. So things like Reddit, Twitter, Quora, all of this. And this is where the mass retail market started to react. The evangelists and people that had pumped huge amounts of money, the hodlers, were furious. And one of them actually sent an email to my company saying, "Dear Benjamin, you run a second-tier strategy consulting firm. Please don't opine on things you have no authority to speak about." Signed off, anonymous. And all of my staff, because it hit the general email account, were actually really taken aback and said, well, how do we respond? I wasn't concerned. I was actually flattered. So I wrote back, thank you very much. We've only been in business for 18 months. I thought we were fourth or maybe a third tier consulting firm. So thank you very much for your vote of confidence for calling us a second tier consultancy. Now, of course, that's a bit of a cheeky reply. But the fact is, I'm a stand-up comedian, and I can draw many parallels with my time on stage. And if you ask any comic, there's no such thing as someone that will get on stage and make everyone in the room laugh. I've been on stage in rooms of 2,000 people, and amidst all the roar and laughter, there's always this one person sitting in the front row with their arms crossed, shaking their head at me. And look, admittedly, you die a little bit inside every time that happens, and you think, oh no, and you can't help but take your gaze off that person. But I always remind myself that this is my position as a comedian and that I cannot please everyone on this journey. And I think the reality is this doesn't mean you should be obnoxious or really unaware of your audience. It's important to know when you're going off course or when you're genuinely being annoying or rubbing people up the wrong way. And that requires a lot of brutal self-reflection, including the ability to admit when you're wrong and move on. In comedy, the parallel is it means you change your material when you see people drifting off, or if you've really lost it and you've lost the audience, knowing when to get off stage. But it doesn't mean you should be afraid to tell a new joke, and it doesn't mean you should be afraid to have an opinion, because testing new ideas is fundamental to growth. So that brings me to lesson 3, which is what other people think of you is really their business. It's not yours. You're always going to have people that disagree with you. But if you put forward a logical position, you express it tactfully, you back it with data and facts, you're likely to at least win their respect, and you will gain a loyal following along the way. This brings me to number 4, which is around promoting your business but staying humble. So I believe as an entrepreneur, you need to promote your business. And a lot of people frown upon self-promotion. But again, as I said, you can't please everyone. But there is nothing wrong in sharing your ideas, expertise, and your success. If I look at myself, I've been very fortunate to have my company featured in a lot of media. One could say we've been lucky, right? But I actually believe we have something interesting to say, and we never sit on the fence, just like my prior piece of advice. We always take a position. But as you go through this process, it is always important to stay humble. Now, it's an interesting area where people say, well, what does this actually mean? Because that can be quite subjective. Maybe some people think I'm the antithesis of humility. I know I've seen comments that say that. Benjamin's very arrogant. He has a big ego. Humility is a very subjective concept, but there's no need to put yourself down or drag yourself down or feign humility because people can detect false modesty. By the same token, don't brag to the point that what I would say marketing feels like utter, self-aggrandization. Try to find that balance, right? And as part of that process, be humble. Say thank you when people compliment your business and success, and always try and do the same to others. Is this encouragement and kind of feeder tends to be very reciprocal. And for those that disagree with you, always it's okay to defend your position, but be aware. Don't shove your views in people's face. even if you're right. Don't ram it down their throat. I've seen these arguments on social media where people can destroy their brand, their personal brand, in a matter of a few posts. Because at the end of the day, your position, your reputation, your personal brand that you build, and how you put your position forward is largely a reflection of you and the reputation you want to build. So that brings me to lesson 4, which is really get out there and promote your business. Because if you don't believe in what you are doing, nobody else will. 5th, network, network, network. So networking is actually one of the most crucial aspects of building a business, and it goes hand in hand with promoting your firm. And the reality is when you start your business, nobody knows who you are. They may know who you are personally, but not your business, because building a brand takes time, right? And a lot of your first clients or customers are likely going to come from existing relationships or referrals or people you know or people they know, just as it did for my business. But as an individual, there are only so many relationships we can have and sustain and properly maintain. So you'll need to start seeking out new customers if you want your business to grow. And a lot of people say, that's the old saying, it's not what you know, it's who you know. While very true, it's still important to know your stuff if you want to build a credible brand. But while you can build all your content and capabilities, and that's great, if you are just focusing on that and not building your relationships, you often find that the quality or uniqueness of what you offer is not enough to sustain the growth of your organization. And this is why, even if you relate it back to the corporate workforce, I often see like many of the brightest and most talented employees slaving away with no recognition for years on end, while some, what I would call very average performers, climb their way to the top of the corporate pyramid. I don't think anyone would disagree with me. And I think we can all see examples of that in our lives. But the similar things happen in business, where many startups with the brightest ideas, they actually go unnoticed and end up failing due to the lack of recognition within their relevant networks. So I think on that point, even if you're an introvert, you dread having to engage in small talk with a room full of strangers. I can guarantee you that more than half the room feels exactly the same way as you. And most people will actually feel relieved that you took the initiative to approach them and strike up a conversation, unless you're doing it at the urinal, of course. But the reality is business, like most things in life, is built on relationships, be it with your customers, your service providers, your competitors, and your employees. And the fact is you want to work with people you know, you trust, and you get along with. This is why people work with you at the end of the day. So lesson number 5 is invest time and effort into building a strong network. And you'll be very surprised how much business comes from the people you know and the people that they know. Number 6 is what I call have fun. And it sounds like a line from Captain Obvious, but many businesses fail miserably at this. As an entrepreneur, I can guarantee you stress, sleepless nights often come with the territory, and we forget about enjoying ourselves. It happens all the time. We worry about never-ending costs, hunting for new leads, tying up with new partners. We lie in bed at night thinking about all these things. And some CEOs bring this stress with them back into the office the next morning, to the dread of their team. And I have never met anyone in my life that works well under a boss who is a complete stress nut, because everyone suffers. So as a CEO, you need to find ways to decompress. This could be, like I do, just take a random day off, right? You exercise regularly. You can tell bad jokes just like me. Or you can have a siesta to combat your post-lunch food coma. I'm quite renowned for doing that on my work couch. But just as important is ensuring your team has fun, because after time you spend more time with your colleagues than pretty much anyone else in your life. So you have to enjoy each other's company. So in like the culture at my firm, what do? We have office drinks, team lunches, Occasionally during summer, we take the whole team out to the beach, to Repulse Bay, to work from one of the coffee shops. Now, while laptops don't work so great in the water, it's great to change up the working environment and get some fresh Hong Kong air, if you can call that. It's a different atmosphere, and I quite enjoy it. Put in the Xbox One and PlayStation 4. Unlike decoration, I actually play quite a lot of it. And, my staff are talking to me, can we get the dartboard, the board games? Sure, no problem. The idea is work. You need to do your work, but there needs to be some fun balance in there. And as the CEO or a business owner, you need to set the tone from the top. And if you come into work every single day stressed out, overly worried, you're unable to have any fun, that's exactly the type of culture you're going to foster. And nobody wants to work in a company like that. So lesson number 6 is really have fun, because there's no point of getting to that, ultimate destination if you haven't actually enjoyed the ride. Number 7 is really never stop learning. So always, the world is changing fast. Technology is changing. You need to keep up to pace with this. And you make so many mistakes as you go on your journey. I've focused on the wrong clients. I spent far too much time doing things that delivered little value, but it's a learning process, and you're going to screw a lot of things up on the way. But you will get a better understanding of your own strengths and weaknesses, and you can avoid making those same mistakes over and over again in the future. I also think it's very important to learn from the people around you, including your colleagues, right? This means you have to let your guard down. You have to drop the ego. Challenge. Ask your staff to challenge views, not for the sake of it, but to find what is right, because the best idea wins. And that is what you need as a startup, as a new business, not what you think the best idea is, the best idea. And only through that environment where every employee is encouraged to speak up and share their views do you improve processes, develop new business ideas, build out a whole new company vision as a result. And I honestly believe my staff have taught me a lot more than I could ever teach them. So lesson number 7 is never stop learning, because the world's not going to wait for you to catch up. Number 8, have a sense of humor. As I said, I'm a stand-up comedian, right? And I remember when I started this firm, a PR company said to me, are you sure you want to mesh your 2 profiles together of being a comedian and a CEO? And I said, absolutely, because it doesn't exist. And it's the one thing that will help me differentiate myself in the market. And I love stand-up comedy, and I love working with people that like to have a laugh. If anyone out there doesn't want to work with me because my job is to make people laugh, I can almost assure you I don't want to work with them. And in my career, pretty much I brought every single client to one of my shows, and I can assure you no love has been lost in that process. Even when you look at someone like David Solomon, CEO of Goldman Sachs, moonlights as a DJ, right? Good on him. He hasn't hit it. And I think that does not detract from his brand or deprofessionalize him. It actually only serves to humanize him, right? So it's important to have that sense of humor. There's going to be a lot of days where you fall on your face and you eat crap, as my fellow business owners like to put it. Laughter will help you get through it. And it's also one of the best ways to cut through tension, build rapport, and help with your network, help with your brand. The reality is, it doesn't matter what your background is. Laughter is the one language that we all speak, irrespective of our race, religion, gender, you name it. So lesson 8, have a sense of humor, because nobody has ever had a bad time laughing. Brings us on to the last 2, right? So stay the course. Running your own business is not easy. All of the Quinlan men in my family have run their own business. And my dad always reminds me, Ben, if it was easy, everyone would be doing it. You're going to have a lot of challenges along the way. But to be honest, even in my business journey, all the clients that we've got, no one sees just how many times I am told, no, thank you, by clients or not interested. Totally okay. The reality is, as part of that process, you build the character. You're starting to realize that, it's part of the journey. Everyone treats failure, it's the wrong word. It's just, there are successes, there are failures. It's not a failure. Life is about having the balance of those 2 experiences, because it's just normal. There's nothing abnormal about it. And the sooner you normalize it and realize it's just business, it's just life, the better you'll understand it. I remember actually, some of the big firms have approached my firm to buy us, and it's very tempting for me at the time to say it would be easy to take a big fat paycheck and do it. But I turned it down because I walked away from every single deal because I set out a vision, a culture, and a business model of something I wanted to challenge, not join the very thing that I didn't like in the beginning, right? So in the short term, that creates problems, right? It's frustrating sometimes you lose out to a big name or someone that has the better rubber stamp than you or someone that has the broader international network. But the reality is I keep reminding myself, I have a spot at the table already. And there are a lot of other firms that are behind us in this list, and we may lose out to one. That's okay. But every CEO knows things take time. There's no such thing as an overnight success. And as hard as the slog may be, always remember what you set out to do. And lesson number 9 is really the unhappiness of failing is short-lived, but the regret of never giving things a proper go will stay with you for life. So believe in what you set out to do and stay the course. Finally, I want to talk on the last note, which is number 10, is do what makes you happy. And I have people ask me all the time, well, what do I do? Career advice from graduates to experienced professionals. And I always say you need to do what makes you happy. I've seen people challenge that and say, don't do what makes you happy. But really, my view is there's three key things you need to achieve. Do what you're good at, do what makes you happy, and do what makes you money. Because you need to feed yourself at the end of the day. If you start with do what makes you money, a lot of the jobs that pay very well because you're not going to like what you do or they don't make you happy. If you do what you're happy with, you tend to be good at it or invest the time and effort and energy into it. And that is why the second one is important. Do what you're good at. Because if you do what you're happy with and you're good at it, you can become a master of your craft and actually treat that as a profession and start to charge money for it. If you do what you love and you're not good at it, and that's where you need to be honest with yourself, that's all right. But treat it as a hobby, not necessarily a career. And that's a very important distinction. But if you do 1 and 2 and they intertwine the right way, 3, the money will come. So there are countless ways to make money. Lesson number 10. So find one that makes you happy. And then life is far too short to work for a paycheck that compensates you for being miserable. So look, I hope you found something useful from this. The only takeaway I really want to leave is all business owners, we're not alone. We all face very similar issues. And beneath the strength and all the success that we want to portray to the outside world, we're all just humans at the end of the day. And with that territory comes making countless mistakes, hitting endless speed bumps, and occasionally screwing things up. But remember, there was a reason you got out of bed one day and decided to start your own business. So don't lose sight of that. Thanks very much.